Are you really mocking an old guard for moving slow? The flag rope clicked against the pole outside as the post office line fell quiet under that late fall light. They scoffed again, pressing him with that small-town stare that weighs more than hands ever could, yet Ed didn't answer. Still, when his coat shifted, a silver badge caught a thin sunbeam, and the room held its breath in a silence so sharp you could hear his own heartbeat steadying the air. But quiet men leave echoes too, and this one began with a glint most folks missed. The post office felt a little older that late fall morning. The kind of cold light that made the brass edges of the service windows look softer, and the smell of paper and pine cleaner settle into something familiar. Ed Branson stood near the entrance, hands folded behind him, the way he had for years. He didn't say much, never had, but he kept the line moving with that steady nod people had come to expect. But the younger crowd never noticed steadiness. 3 local troublemakers drifted in together, talking too loud for the quiet space. Their jackets were bright, their tones brighter, and every joke seemed designed to bounce off the walls. One of them pointed at Ed's slow step as he turned to adjust the doorstop. "Careful there, old man," he said, voice syrupy with mock concern. "Don't want to strain something just keeping the door open." A few folks in line lowered their eyes. It wasn't new Ed had been catching remarks like that for months, but it landed a little harder today. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was the way the manager was already watching, arms folded, ready to interpret everything as a delay. Well, another said, leaning toward his buddies, maybe the post office should hire someone who can actually keep up. Ed didn't respond. He just reached for the edge of the door again, setting it into place with a gentleness that didn't fit their tone at all. His coat shifted when he moved, and for the briefest moment, the silver badge pinned inside caught a sliver of light. A soft gleam, almost like a wink from another time. Still, most people didn't notice. But someone did. A retired school teacher in the line, Mrs. Calloway, tilted her head, noticing the glint under his coat. She didn't say anything, just watched him with the kind of careful attention older folks reserved for things others overlooked. Then the manager stepped out from the back, holding a stack of outgoing envelopes. "Ed," he called, not bothering to lower his voice. "Let's keep the line moving. People are waiting." Ed nodded once, the same even nod he always gave. But the comment tugged at the room. It created that small, quiet humiliation that hangs in the air longer than anyone wants to admit. "Yeah," one of the troublemakers muttered loud enough for the whole lobby, "maybe we should cut his hours. Might speed things up." A few chuckles. Thin ones, not proud ones. Ed stepped back to his post, folding his hands again. The coat shifted once more and the badge flickered in the weak morning sun. Not enough for a reveal, just enough to whisper that something about him didn't quite match the jokes being thrown his way. Then the line moved forward a notch, and someone else in the crowd. Caleb, the young clerk manning window 2, looked over his computer screen and watched Ed a beat longer than usual. But someone in line watches differently. The troublemakers didn't see it. Still, the badge glints once, and that was enough to start the story. The line thinned a little as late morning settled in. Outside, the wind pushed dry leaves against the brick steps, but inside the post office, everything felt warm, almost slow, the way small-town spaces often do right before lunch. Ed noticed an older woman near the counter, coat too big for her shoulders, hands shaking slightly as she tried to read the renewal form. He stepped toward her with that same quiet steadiness he always carried. "Take your time, ma'am," he said softly, offering her a pen. "I can help if you'd like." She exhaled in relief. "Oh, thank you. These letters feel smaller every year." Ed guided her through the boxes, pointing gently, never rushing. The troublemakers watched from their place in line, smirking like helping someone was somehow funny. "Look at him," one whispered. "Guy acts like he's running national security." Another snickered. "Man, he's just a guard." Caleb heard the comment from his station. He tried not to react, but something in him flicked like a wire being nudged into place. He glanced up from his computer screen and saw Ed leaning over the form, patient, steady. Then he noticed it again, the badge. Not just a glint this time. When Ed shifted his coat sleeve to free his hand, the silver shape was clear under the lapel. Not police, not postal service. Something older. Something with weight. Caleb blinked, trying to place it. Then someone called from the back. Ed, the manager, barked, stepping out with a half-opened box of stamps. "We need the line moving. No personal tutoring, please." The room tightened. Ed straightened slowly. "Just helping her finish the form," he said. "Well, let's keep things efficient," the manager replied, clipping each word like it cost money. "We're behind." A thin wave of discomfort passed through the lobby. Mrs. Calloway frowned. The old woman being helped lowered her eyes as if she'd done something wrong. Caleb felt his jaw tighten, though he didn't know why. Ed simply stepped back to his post. But as he moved, his coat fell open just a moment longer, and the badge caught full light, bright enough for Caleb to see the markings he didn't recognize. Not decorative. Not novelty. Something real. Then Caleb sees the badge clearer. The troublemakers didn't notice. They were too busy nudging each other like kids who'd gotten away with something. "Maybe the post office should just hire someone younger," one of them said, pretending to stretch. "Someone who won't slow the whole town down." Caleb watched Ed turn toward the lobby door, his posture unchanged, but something quieter settling in his shoulders, a small gravity that didn't match the jokes being thrown around him. Ed checked the entrance again, as if keeping watch was more than a duty to him, like it was something closer to instinct. Caleb felt that flick again, stronger this time. And as Ed walked toward the front to adjust a loose floor sign, Caleb slipped out from behind his station, pretending to sort outgoing mail just to get closer. But the room shifts again. He wasn't sure what he expected to find, but he knew he needed to see more. The back hallway of the post office always felt a little cooler than the front. Concrete floor humming vents, the faint scent of ink and cardboard. Caleb had walked this corridor 100 times without ever thinking twice. But today, he wasn't walking it for errands. Today, he was following a feeling. He slipped into the small records room, where old training photos and certificates were stacked in labeled boxes. Dust motes floated in the thin light. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, only that the badge on Ed's coat didn't match any security guard he'd ever seen. He started opening boxes. First employee rosters, then volunteer logs. Still nothing. Then tucked inside a worn folder marked Community Response, 1999, he found it. A faded photograph. Ed, 20, maybe 25 years younger, stood beside a rescue truck, rain gear slung over one shoulder. He wasn't posing, not really. Just standing there with the same quiet steadiness he carried today. Behind him, a handwritten caption, Flood Evacuation Crew, Local Volunteers. Caleb stared at it longer than he meant to. Then he noticed the badge. The same shape, the same edge, the same silver tone. His breath hitched. He kept digging. At the bottom of the folder lay a brittle newspaper clipping, yellowed at the corners. Local man saves 3 during storm rescue. Volunteer hailed as quiet hero. Caleb whispered, "Ed, you did this." Footsteps sounded behind him. He turned to see Mr. Halpern, the postmaster, standing in the doorway, eyebrows pulled tight. "What are you doing back here, son?" the older man asked. Caleb held up the clipping with both hands. "Sir, this is him, Ed. Why isn't this posted anywhere?" Halpern stepped closer. He took the clipping carefully, the way you handle something that once mattered to people. His eyes scanned the text, then the picture, then drifted toward the wall, as though trying to pull an old memory back into focus. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then the postmaster's face drains. Quietly he murmured, "I'd forgotten this existed." Caleb swallowed. "Sir, those guys outside, they've been waiting for him, like they're trying to corner him over nothing." Halpern looked up sharply. "You sure?" "Yes, sir. And the manager keeps scolding him for helping people. It's wrong." The postmaster folded the clipping and tucked it into his jacket pocket, near his heart, not his pen. "We need to go," he said, voice low, controlled, carrying the weight of someone who suddenly realized something had gone too far. "Still," he says, "we need to go." Caleb nodded, feeling the shift. The first tremor of something bigger turning. They headed toward the lobby, and the story moved with them. The foyer of the post office felt smaller after lunch, as if the walls had moved an inch closer when no one was looking. Afternoon sun hit the windows in angled strips, catching dust in slow floating lines. Ed stood near the door again, quiet, steady, just as Caleb and the postmaster stepped in from the back hallway. But they weren't the only ones waiting. The three troublemakers stood near the lobby bulletin board, whispering in a way meant to be overheard. When they saw Ed, their chatter sharpened. "There he is," one said. "Man walks like he owns the place," another added. Ed didn't change his posture. He simply walked toward the front counter, checking the tape on a floor sign that had curled at the corner. The men moved with him, shifting sideways until they blocked the narrow path between the wall and the stamp machine. "You gonna step aside, old man?" The tallest one asked, his tone too loud for the quiet foyer. "We're just asking a question." Ed paused, the sign still in his hand. The room shifted. Not loudly quiet pressure, the kind that settles on a person 1 ounce at a time. And that was when the symbolic turn began. Caleb watched as the troublemakers leaned in, not touching, not pushing, just crowding him with the kind of mock authority young men adopt when they think no one will call them on it. Regulation pinned him harder than any grip. Ed tried to step back toward the wall, but the path tightened again, shaped by their half-smiles and the steady weight of being judged for no reason at all. The lobby went silent. Too silent. The room slammed him with its silence. A woman near the P.O. boxes stopped sorting her mail. Mrs. Calloway froze with her purse half-zipped. Even the manager hesitated in the doorway. That was when the postmaster stepped forward. His voice cut through the air, not loud, but firm, the way people speak when they carry both authority and regret. "Enough." The troublemakers turned, surprised. The oldest one scoffed. "We're not doing anything. Just talking." Halpern didn't answer. Instead, he placed a hand on Ed's shoulder, not to guide him, but to steady the space around him. Then he reached toward Ed's coat and lifted the lapel, gently revealing the silver service badge beneath. For the first time all day, the room exhaled. It wasn't a decorative pin. It wasn't a thrift store novelty. It was the emblem given to volunteer responders who'd helped evacuate the North District during the chemical spill 15 years ago. The postmaster's voice softened. He didn't just keep this lobby safe. Years ago, he protected this town. The words landed like a slow bell. Caleb saw the truth pass through the room, the recognition, the sudden rewiring of assumptions that had been too easy to make. Then everything stops. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the thugs seemed smaller now, not because anyone forced them back, but because the truth had unmade their bravado. Caleb looked at Ed standing there, with that same steady posture, the badge catching the light in a way no insult could dim. But the badge says the rest. And it did. Better than any explanation ever could. The foyer didn't sound the same after the reveal. People weren't whispering anymore. They were simply quiet. The kind of quiet that meant they were replaying everything they'd seen in their heads and realizing they'd been standing in the wrong place, morally speaking, for longer than they wanted to admit. The troublemakers stood stiff near the stamp machine, their earlier confidence drained like color from a picture left in the sun. None of them spoke. They didn't even look at one another. They just stared at the floor, shifting their weight like boys who'd suddenly discovered their shoes. The manager stepped forward first. His usual clipped tone was gone, replaced by something low and unsteady. "Ed, I owe you an apology," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I shouldn't have rushed you earlier. I didn't know." Ed didn't move. He didn't nod. Didn't offer relief. He simply stood there with his hands folded, as if giving the room time to settle itself. Still, the manager tried again. "I'm sorry." Winter light angled through the glass above the door. It caught the badge, now fully visible, sending a pale shimmer across the lobby floor. The glow wasn't bright, just enough to make people look twice. Caleb stepped forward next, his voice steady but soft. "Sir," he said, addressing the postmaster, first, then Ed. "I found the clipping. And the photo. It wasn't right for us not to know. And it wasn't right for anyone to talk to you the way they did." He swallowed once, then added, "You kept people safe then. And you've been doing it every day since." The community turned, watching the troublemakers. One of them finally broke. "Look, but the words collapsed before they left his mouth. The postmaster looked at them with a calm that felt heavier than anger. "You boys owe this man respect," he said. "More than respect, really." The tallest opened his mouth as if to speak, but the room didn't grant him the space. Not with stares like that. Not with a truth so freshly revealed. Caleb stepped slightly closer to Ed. "I know you don't want attention," he said quietly, "but people need to understand what it means to show up. Every day, even when no one sees it." The badge caught the light again, echo soft, silver, reflective. Mrs. Calloway placed a hand over her heart. "Bless you, Ed," she whispered. "I remember that storm. I didn't know." Around her, others nodded slowly. Memory turning into recognition, recognition turning into something closer to respect. Yet the room waits on Ed. All eyes fell on him, even the ones that had been proudest a moment ago. Ed looked at the badge, then at the postmaster, then at Caleb, the young man who had bothered to look deeper when no one else had. He exhaled a breath that seemed to release the weight of years. He didn't give a speech. He didn't lecture. He simply nodded once, steady, humble, the way he'd done everything in his life. Then he nods once. And that small gesture said more than anything else could. A week passed, the kind that slid by softly, frost on windshields, early sunsets, and the quiet hum of the town settling into winter. The post office felt different now, not louder, not busier, just different. People lingered longer. Doors held open a little more. Eyes met with a touch more intention. On Monday morning, a small crowd gathered near the front lobby wall. The postmaster stood beside a newly installed wooden frame, its glass still catching a faint chill from outside. Caleb stood at his right, hands in pockets, heart ticking a little faster than usual. Ed approached last. He didn't rush. He didn't shrink from the attention. He simply walked with that same steady rhythm everyone had grown used to, one foot planted the next, placed with a kind of quiet certainty. The postmaster cleared his throat. "We wanted the town to remember," he said, "and to understand." Inside the frame rested the photograph. Caleb found the old newspaper clipping and a small brass plate newly engraved. The letters caught the weak winter sunlight just enough to glow. He protected this town. People murmured softly, as if the inscription carried a warmth that didn't belong to the weather. Caleb glanced at Ed. "Sir." It felt right. Ed looked at the plaque for a long moment. He didn't smile, but something eased in his shoulders, something that had been there longer than anyone realized. The postmaster nodded to him. "Ed, if you'd like. The display isn't complete without the badge." Ed reached into his coat. The badge came out slowly, as if it were remembering every place it had been tucked away, the storms, the nights on watch, the mornings he'd shown up without fanfare. Its silver surface caught the light and reflected across the polished floor. A few people inhaled softly. Ed placed it inside the case, setting it gently beside the clipping. When he let go, the badge stayed angled just enough to catch the pale sun coming through the lobby windows. A final echo, Caleb whispered, "It looks right there." Ed shrugged quietly. It served long enough. Still, something flickered in his eyes, pride maybe, or simply a feeling recognized after being silent too long. The postmaster closed the display case with a small click. "Thank you, Ed," he said, "for more than you ever said out loud." A woman in the crowd dabbed her eye. Someone else took off his hat. The troublemakers weren't there. They didn't have to be. The town itself was present, and that was enough. Ed stepped back, looking at the plaque, the photo, the badge his story held in a frame that finally let the truth breathe. Caleb spoke softly, as if sharing something meant for everyone. "Some heroes protect a town," once he said. "Others protect it every day." The lobby fell into a warm silence, the kind that doesn't slam, doesn't pin, doesn't pressure, the kind that recognizes. Ed gave one small nod like he always did when words felt too big. Outside, the winter sun brightened just a little, touching the glass, with a glow that looked almost like a quiet salute. On quiet winter mornings, folks still pause by the little display near the post office door, where the light drifts across Ed's old badge and the plaque that reads, "He protected this town." Still, people say it wasn't the storm years ago that defined him. It was the way he showed up every day afterward, steady as a porch lamp glowing in a cold window. Then, as Caleb often tells newcomers, some heroes protect a town once and some just keep doing it without saying a word, a soft reminder that kindness doesn't ask for applause. Quietly, the badge catches a thin line of sun, and it feels like the town is nodding back, grateful, in the simplest way, one small echo at a time.